The grand chamber of the Galactic Council, carved into the heart of a hollowed moon, had never fallen so silent. Rows of alien dignitaries, scaled, furred, feathered, and metallic, sat frozen, their eyes fixed on the single human standing at the center. Ambassador Alina Ward, Earth's most respected diplomat, did not shout or demand attention. Her voice was calm, steady, and final. Earth no longer answers to a council that fears change. With those quiet words, she turned and walked away, leaving behind stunned silence and a storm that would soon spread across the galaxy for over 100 years. Earth had grown from a relatively unknown world to one of the most advanced civilizations in the Galactic Council. Their rise had been fast, forced too fast for the older, slower-moving species to accept. While others debated for years over minor changes, humanity created new technologies, offered new solutions, and transformed the galaxy's outer systems with bold energy projects and deep space trade. Their thinking was different, patient, daring, and full of impossible ideas that somehow worked. The Council had welcomed Earth once, hoping to shape their ambition. And now they were walking away. Behind the Council's polished speeches and public messages of unity, chaos bloomed. Ambassadors gathered in secret rooms, voices raised in alarm. The ancient Cathal, a race older than most stars, stood slowly before the others and spoke. Their voice like wind over stone. Humans innovate in decades what takes us millennia. Without them, the balance collapses. Some species agreed, their economies tied closely to Earth's technology. Others felt threatened, believing Earth had become too powerful, too unpredictable. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was this a quiet rebellion, or the first move in something greater? Alina Ward returned to Earth without answering any questions. She gave no interviews, made no speeches, and yet every news network across the galaxy showed the same image, a single human walking out of the council chamber, unafraid, leaving behind centuries of diplomacy and fragile trust. Earth's sudden silence was louder than any declaration. Trade networks, once busy with human-built ships, began to slow. Scientific missions paused. Agreements were left unsigned. Earth had not declared war, but they had withdrawn their cooperation, and the effect was immediate. On Earth, people watched the stars with new eyes. Some feared what might come next. Others felt relief, even pride. For years, there had been whispers that the Council was holding Earth back, blocking ideas, slowing progress, limiting what humanity could become. Now, free from that grip, Earth turned inward. Nations that had once competed now worked together under a united vision. Hidden beneath the oceans, buried under deserts, and orbiting high above the planet, something called Project Bastion began to take shape. No one outside Earth knew what it was. No one inside Earth was allowed to speak of it. Even the name raised questions the galaxy couldn't answer. Meanwhile, Council systems tried to predict Earth's next move. Some believed humanity would isolate itself and slowly fade. Others feared they were preparing something far bigger. The more hopeful voices insisted Earth would return once tempers cooled. But behind those hopes was a deep and growing unease. Ships crossing Earth's borders were now met by advanced warning systems and quiet shadow-like drones. There were no attacks, no threats, all a message, simple and unmistakable. This is Earth's space. You are not welcome. For many species, the galaxy had always moved slowly. Decisions took years, sometimes centuries, but humans moved like wildfire. They adapted, rebuilt, and reinvented at speeds that defied logic. Their withdrawal didn't just remove a seat from the council, it removed the engine that had powered its most recent successes. And now, without that engine, the galaxy began to drift into uncertainty in the shadows of distant systems. Pirate clans that had been driven back by Earth's patrol fleets began to rise again. Trade ships traveling without human escorts grew. Nervous border conflicts reignited. And while the council tried to hold things together, one uncomfortable truth echoed through their halls. Earth had done more than participate. They had been the force that kept the fragile peace intact. And now, they were gone. Still Still, no one knew what Earth truly wanted. Were they preparing for conflict? Building new technology? Exploring something beyond the edge of the known stars? The Council, for all its wisdom, had no answer, only questions. And in the silence that followed Earth's exit, those questions grew louder. Alina Ward, now back on Earth, looked out across the stars from her observatory high above the clouds. She said nothing. But deep beneath her feet in hidden laboratories, in underground facilities, scientists, engineers, and thinkers worked day and night on something no council species could imagine. Earth had not walked away because they were angry. No, they had walked away because they were ready to build something new, something the rest of the galaxy was not yet prepared to understand. And somewhere, in the quiet between stars, change was coming. The silence that followed Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council did not stay quiet for long. In just a matter of weeks, the effects began to spread across the stars like cracks through glass. Trade routes that had once thrived with the steady rhythm of human-built cargo ships slowed to a crawl, and in some places, stopped completely. Entire colonies depended on Earth's logistics systems, AI traffic controls, and security satellites. Now those systems were offline or unresponsive. In the outer sectors, pirate groups that had once vanished under the watchful eyes of Earth's patrol fleets now resurfaced, stronger and more aggressive. They moved quickly, taking control of trade hubs, harassing merchant ships, and creating fear in systems that had known peace for decades. Without human support, many council worlds found themselves defenseless, and their cries for help were met with empty promises from the central chambers. Earth, once the silent guardian of fragile borders, was no longer answering the calls. Inside, the council panic grew behind closed doors. Technological projects led by human engineers came to a halt as Earth disconnected from research databases and shut down shared labs. Some species tried to continue their work without human help, but progress slowed. It became clear that Earth's contributions had been more critical than anyone had admitted. Former allies reached out again and again, sending messages filled with concern, regret, and even desperation. They pleaded for answers, for discussion, for Earth to return to the table. But Earth said nothing. Their response was absence, their silence more powerful than words. On Earth itself, something unusual was happening. For the first time in centuries, humanity had no external enemy to fight and no internal rival to divide. Them, governments and corporations, scientists and soldiers, thinkers and builders, everyone turned their focus inward. They worked with quiet urgency on something known only as Project Bastion. Details were scarce. Whispers spoke of deep-sea labs, orbiting stations, and data sealed behind quantum firewalls, so secure that even Earth's own AI systems could not fully access them without permission. The name appeared on encrypted transmissions and black budget reports, but beyond that, there was only mystery. Even the Council's best intelligence networks could not uncover what Bastion truly was. Some guessed it was a superweep, a fleet of advanced ships, or a new kind of defense grid. Others believed it might be an experiment in artificial life, or long-range travel beyond the edge of the galaxy. No one knew for sure, and that not knowing was the most dangerous part. Throughout the galaxy, the uncertainty became a fear of what Earth might do next. Council leaders gathered in emergency sessions, trying to agree on a plan, but their unity was weakening. Some wanted to reach out with kindness and offer peace. Others whispered about preparing for war just in case. A few more cautious voices urged them to wait and observe. One of these voices belonged to Zelron, a respected diplomat and former liaison to Earth. Unlike many of his peers, Zelron had spent years among humans, studying their history, culture, and way of thinking. He watched Earth's silence, not with fear, but with curiosity and a growing sense of realization. In one private meeting, as others debated military action, he spoke up quietly but firmly. They aren't preparing for war, they're preparing to leap. His words were met with confusion, but he offered no further explanation. He had seen it before in the way humans acted. They never stopped at what was expected. They never settled for the limits others accepted. When pushed into a corner, they didn't retreat, they evolved. And this time, Earth was not reacting to a threat. They were reaching for something far beyond the Council's imagination. Somewhere in the silence of their planet, something was being built. Something not meant to fight or to defend, but to break free from the rules everyone else followed. Zelron sensed it deep in his bones. He didn't know what Bastion truly was, but he believed it was the next step for humanity. Whether the galaxy was ready or not, didn't matter. Earth had already begun. And while the rest of the Council scrambled to hold their worlds together, the quiet blue planet at the edge of the stars was preparing for a future no one else could see. Tension ran like a crack through crystal across the halls of the Galactic Council, a place once proud of its unity now shaking under the weight of division. Ever since Earth had walked away, nothing had been the same, and now the cracks were becoming rifts. Former allies, once bound by shared treaties and quiet trust, now stood on opposite sides of every decision. The peaceful races urged diplomacy and dialogue, afraid of what a confrontation with Earth might lead to, while the more aggressive species, led by voices filled with fear and pride, called for a show of strength before it was too late. Among them, the Dravarian old warrior race with a history of expansion and conflicts saw Earth's silence not as a warning, but as an opportunity. Without hesitation, they sent a fleet toward the small border world of Cerealia, a planet once under human protection, now left exposed by Earth's absence from Council operations. The Dravari moved fast, landing troops and declaring the planet a new part of their territory. The people of Cerealia, mostly peaceful traders and scientists, knew they could not resist. They sent a signal toward Sol, not expecting much, just a hope, a whisper into the dark. For 3 days nothing came. The Dravari continued their occupation, confident that Earth had truly abandoned its old responsibilities. Council members argued against them, blaming the humans for leaving, others blaming the Dravari for starting conflict. But before any decision could be made, something happened that none of them had predicted. On the 4th day, 12 ships appeared over Cerealia, arriving in perfect silence, as if the stars themselves had made way for their arrival. Sleek, silver-gray vessels, without visible weapons or markings, hovered above the Dravari fleet. There were no warnings, no hails, no demands. The human ships simply acted. In a matter of minutes, the Dravari fleet was disabled, engines off, power drained, navigation frozen. Not a single shot was fired. Not one person was harmed. The technology was unfamiliar, far beyond what even Earth had previously shown. The message was delivered to every ship, every city, every listening ear. We protect who we choose. We no longer ask permission. And then, just as quickly, the human ships vanished, leaving behind silence and stunned disbelief. For the people of Cerealia, it was a moment of hope, of rescue. For the rest of the galaxy, it was a warning. Earth had not abandoned its power. It had only chosen to use it differently. The Council was shaken to its core. Discussions turned to accusations. Why had no one seen this coming? How had Earth built such silent strength without the Council noticing? And what did it mean that they had intervened without orders, without even a word to the Council? The truth settled in slowly. Like dust after a storm, Earth was not part of the Council anymore. Not just in law, but in thought, in action, in identity. They were becoming something else, something unbound by the rules and fears of the past. Even those who had once doubted now began to wonder what path Earth was truly walking. Some believed they had turned cold, operating by their own will without concern for others. But a few, like Zelron, saw something deeper, a kind of focus, a vision that reached beyond politics and power. The human response at Cerealia had not been about territory or control, it had been about choice. They chose to protect, not out of obligation, but because they believed it was right. And they had done so with a level of control and restraint that no other civilization could match. It was a message not of domination, but of independence. And yet, with that independence came fear, because the galaxy no longer knew what Earth wanted or where it was going. Their silence was no longer seen as weakness. It had become the greatest mystery of all. What were they building in the shadows of their homeworld? What was Project Bastion truly meant for? Were they isolating themselves or preparing to lead? In a new way, no answers came, only questions. And in the vastness of space, questions like these had the power to shape the future of entire civilizations. The Council, once the symbol of unity, now stood divided not just by politics, but by fear of the unknown. Earth, in turning away, had not vanished. They had simply stepped onto a path no one else could yet follow. And somewhere beyond the charts and maps, they were building something that would change everything, as silence settled once again around Earth's mysterious behavior. The galaxy found itself haunted not just by questions, but by whispers, strange, unbelievable rumors that spread like quiet waves across distant systems. Traders claimed to see unnatural flashes of light near the edge of Sol's system, brief distortions that twisted space and vanished before sensors could lock on. Ships sent to investigate either failed to report back or returned with strange changes updated. Systems that no one understood, navigation logs filled with missing time, and technology that defied known science. These ships didn't speak of battles or threats. Instead, their captains simply said they had been shown something, though they could never describe it clearly. They spoke in half sentences, as if trying to recall a dream already fading. What they saw had changed them, and Earth remained silent. The Galactic Council, already broken into arguing factions, could not agree on how to respond. Some species suggested diplomacy again, though their messages were ignored. Others, growing desperate, turned to covert methods. Teams were sent in secret to infiltrate Earth's outer colonies, hoping to learn the truth behind these strange anomalies. Not a single one of them returned. No distress signals, no last messages, only silence. The more they tried to uncover Earth's secrets, the more the galaxy realized it was too late. They were already behind. Then, without warning, a signal was transmitted across the entire galactic network. It came from Earth but echoed beyond its boundaries. Every communication array, every satellite, and every listening post heard the same calm, clear voice in dozens of languages. Humanity is opening the path. We offered you a seat. You chose fear. We choose evolution. The message was not loud or angry. It was simply true. And then the galaxy saw it. A live feed, clear and uninterrupted, showed something impossible. Orbiting a newborn artificial star one that had not existed only months ago was Bastion. Not just a station, not a ship, but something beyond current definition. It was massive, its design unfamiliar, a structure of light and alloy in motion that twisted in ways no known architecture could explain. It moved gently, not by engines, but seemingly by intention. Around it shimmered fields of energy, bending space, humming with barely controlled force. This construct was not hiding near Earth. It was floating far beyond the galactic plane, in a region where no one had built before. The Council was stunned. The star itself appeared to have been manufactured, its light too precise, its gravity field too stable. Some believed it was a sun made by human hands. Others thought it might be a gateway, but none could deny that. Bastion was a symbol of freedom, of vision, and of something that made even the boldest civilizations feel small. The message that followed was simple but powerful. Earth did not threaten, did not demand submission or loyalty. What it offered was far more unsettling. A choice. Bastion was not built for war. What? It was not a fortress to keep enemies out. It was something meant to go beyond the known edges of understanding. Humanity was no longer waiting for permission to explore what others feared. They were not asking to be included. They were showing the path and leaving the door open for those brave enough to follow. Some in the Council were inspired. Young leaders and thinkers dreamed of joining Earth's journey. Others, older and more cautious, saw danger in that level of independence. What if Earth triggered something unknown? Yes. What if they brought back knowledge that the galaxy was not ready for? But no matter what anyone believed, one fact remained. Earth had moved on. They had crossed a boundary others didn't yet see. And they had done it not with conquest, but with creativity, unity, and purpose. The sight of Bastion, a structure so advanced, yet so peaceful, sent a wave of realization across civilizations. This was not a weapon. was a sign of what humanity could build when no one stood in their way. The council tried to understand, to respond, to catch up, but it became clear that this was no longer about council politics. Earth had become something else, something the galaxy had no name for.
Yes.
They were explorers, yes, but also architects of what came next. They were building not just new technology, but a new way of existing. The message was still playing in distant systems, repeated softly as if inviting each world to listen one more time. We choose evolution. And in the minds of many, the question formed not in fear, but in wonder what had humanity seen out there, beyond the stars, that made them so certain. And what would they become before the rest of the galaxy could even understand the question? As the image of Bastion continued to echo across the stars, the Galactic Council, once the symbol of unity, now stood fractured beyond repair. The old order no longer held its shape, and with every passing day, more worlds faced the question they had hoped to avoid. Would they continue following a council that was falling behind? Or would they take the risk of stepping into the unknown with Earth? For some, the choice was simple. Small colonies, once dependent on council trade, but now inspired by Earth's boldness, quietly shifted their loyalties. Research stations sent encoded messages towards Sol, requesting dialogue, even guidance. New voices rose: scientists, engineers, dreamers calling for cooperation with the only civilization moving forward. Others resisted the pull of change. Proud empires, fearful of losing their traditions, formed new alliances to protect their old ways. They warned their people that Earth's vision was dangerous, too fast, too untested. But beneath their speeches was a growing fear that they were being left behind. In the middle of this rising storm, Alina Ward appeared once more, not within the marble halls of the council, but through a galaxy-wide transmission from a place no one recognized. She stood calmly against a backdrop of starlight and silver. Towers, her voice firm yet full of quiet strength. "We were never your underlings," she began. "We were your mirror. Now we forge ahead. Not as rulers, not as rebels, but as architects of what comes next." Her words rang out not as a declaration of victory, but as a reflection of a deeper truth. Earth had never tried to control the galaxy. They had tried to improve it, to challenge its limits. And when the Council chose caution over change, humanity chose to move forward alone. But they were not closing the door. Bastion was not a fortress. It was an open gate. Her speech spread quickly, played on every channel, repeated in dozens of languages, shared by both allies and former rivals. Across distant planets and space stations, people watched and listened not to threats or promises, but to the calm confidence of a civilization no longer waiting for approval. Ships began leaving Council space, heading toward Earth or the space. Around Bastion carried scientists, thinkers, and sometimes entire families hoping to be part of something greater. Some called it defection, others called it awakening. Even within the Council, debates turned inward. Younger members began to question everything they had been taught. Was tradition worth more than progress? Could safety be found in standing still while someone else reached for the stars? At the same time, Earth remained steady. They issued no demands. They answered no provocations. Bastion hovered in silence, visible to all, but offering no clear instructions. It was up to others to decide what it meant. Was it the beginning of a new alliance, or the birth of something entirely different? The galaxy now faced a moment it had never experienced before, choice not between war and peace, but between fear and curiosity. No one knew what would happen next. There were no roadmaps, no guarantees, but one thing was certain: humanity had shown that evolution was not just about technology, but about daring to act when no one else would. They had stepped beyond the familiar, not because they sought power, but because they believed something better was possible. And in doing so, they had changed the shape of the future. Even those who still feared Earth's independence had to admit that the humans had achieved something extraordinary, not through conquest, but through vision, courage, and unity. Bastion now served as a symbol not only of what Earth had built, but of what others might one day build for themselves. The galaxy had reached a turning point, and no leader, no council, no alliance could ignore it. A new era had begun, not one ruled by humans, but one inspired by them. At the center of this awakening stood a civilization once underestimated, once dismissed, and now impossible to define. Humanity did not shine because they claimed dominance. They shined because they had broken away on, dared to lead where no one else had gone. And somewhere beyond the reach of old maps and familiar stars, the path they were opening stretched onward into the unknown.